There's a lot really in that back office, invoicing, administrative type of data entry, that kind of stuff would be one. Obviously, inventory, if that could be, more automated than, me pulling files from all the different platforms we were on and doing a bunch of VLOOKUPs to get stuff right. So
Yeah. Hi, Addie. Thanks for joining our show today, the heySynth experience. And, fun fact, you were our mentor at Techstars and randomly bumped into you here in Austin some weeks ago at the SKU event. And that was wonderful. So, how have you been, really?
I've been great. I've been great. Certainly coming off of Showcase was wonderful and kind of a real high just being part of the community and seeing you there and just it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Was your first time in Austin or have you been here before?
No, my first time in Austin. I've traveled a lot, but haven't been to Austin yet. So
What
no,
a shame. Well, I mean, you made it now, so thank God for you.
that's right. Yeah, it was
Did you
fun.
have a good time here, though?
I had a great time. Yeah, I had a wonderful time.
So, just to set the stage, it would be great to just share who you are and what you've been doing over the last couple of years, especially in the CPG space. I mean, you're an operator, a mentor, investor, everything really. So, it'll be great for folks to just know who Addie is.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a former founder, started a CPG company in dog treats, a brand called Pet and Shape. Started in 2005, such as selling dog treats store to store out of the back of my car here in the local Los Angeles area, and then eventually, broader into San Francisco, Sacramento, essentially anywhere I had a friend who I can sleep on their couch while I was in town. And over 16 plus years, built that to a point that in 2021, I'm fortunate that we were able to sell the business to a private equity backed strategic. And since post sale, I've really just focused on teaching, mentoring, and coaching other founders, particularly in the CPG space, but not necessarily, but mostly has been, with you, it was not necessarily CPG, but CPG related.
Yeah.
Um, and I've really enjoyed, taking on that mentorship coach type role. I was very fortunate that I had really impactful mentors during my time in business that really shaped my business and who I am as a person. So I'm a big believer in having your really trusted circle of advisors that are able to guide you through all the turbulent times that any business really takes you through. So yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since. Hence I was in Austin. I was a lead mentor on this year's track, which I really enjoyed doing that and look forward to doing more of it.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen lots of consumer brands over the years. I mean, you operated one as well. What's been the red thread through the founders you love working with? Like, what's been unique about them, and why did you enjoy working with them?
I really think it comes down to there has to be a certain grit, a certain force of getting stuff done and just grinding, right? I think often we hear these stories, and you and I probably talked about it, of everybody wants hockey stick growth in 3 years. And sure that does happen, and similar to how some people win the lottery, but the vast majority of businesses are not that, right? And it's a long grind of 1,001 ups and downs. And I think it takes a certain character of a person who's gonna be willing not only to do whatever it takes, but go through all those ups and downs. So it's really looking for grit, and determination, and not believing that there are shortcuts, right? Obviously, you want to work efficiently, but there are no shortcuts to it. Oftentimes it takes phone calls, it takes emails, it takes following up,
Yeah.
just doing that again and again and again. And I think oftentimes founders think that, oh, I'm just going to post about it, or I'm going to, no, it takes more than that. So anyway, I got a little off track there, but it's a founder that can go through all that, right? And do the little things. I say, especially in CPG, and probably because of my background, but a lot of times I'm finding in a lot of the mentorship opportunity I get that people they don't go into the local shop, right? Everything is digital first, right? And if it's not digital, it's how do I get into Whole Foods?
Yeah.
Well, that's great to get into Whole Foods. What about your local market? What about the local, store? And just walking in, building a relationship, and that takes grit and determination to get there. So I kind of look for that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And even for us too, we've gone through the journey as well. We've done different pivots from where we were to when we met you at Techstars, and even where we are right now.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you remember what we're doing at Techstars during the mentorship, mentor madness, how would you describe the then versus now version of Synth? From the team perspective, but even the product perspective.
Oh, I probably told you this before. Well, I know I did. Yeah, you guys went through a complete transformation, not only from the business name that you had walking into Techstars,
Yeah.
but really the whole platform itself completely changed, and from a design and a depth standpoint, you guys came a long way during that time, and I haven't even seen the latest stuff, but I'm sure it's even further ahead than that.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. It is. We'll show you a demo in the coming weeks. So let's move forward to the SKU Spring showcase. What was your biggest hell yes moment? Watching the founders pitch. You also mentored a bunch of them, or one of them at least. But seeing all the startups out there, which one really stood out to you, and you're like really excited to, if you could support them, you would have probably invested in them as well.
Oh wow. I mean, really, I'd love to help all of them. They were such wonderful, a great group, a great cohort of founders. So I thought that was it's just really fun, as you mentioned previously, of just seeing their growth, seeing how their business have evolved, or their insight, and that was particularly rewarding in obviously the team that I mentored on, just seeing it all come to fruition, right? And seeing them up on stage and pitching with confidence, and I just thought it was fun, just having the energy in the room. It was really neat.
Yeah. Did you see any emerging trends that the broader industry should be paying attention to based on these upcoming or emerging brands that we're seeing?
Um, I mean, obviously, everything protein is everything, right? It seems to be right now. I don't know what else. I think this whole better for you, and mushrooms, and I heard creatine the other day is a big emerging thing. It's really growing fast. So I think it's all these supplements and infusing different products
Yeah.
with whatever the hottest new trend is. I wouldn't be surprised in a few years there's infused creatine flavored whatever, right? Or now it's protein, it's vitamin C 1,000 years ago. It just evolves. So it's just infused stuff.
I mean, you've been down this road before. You've pitched your startup. You've grown your startup up until an exit, and I think it'd be great for other founders to, hear some real talk and tough love from you. What's the one thing you wish more founders would stop doing, or even start doing, when it comes to operations or go to market?
Wow, it goes back to what I said. It's grind. It's getting out there, shaking hands, looking at people in the eyes, building relationships, getting away from the screen as being your only sales tool, and really going out and face to face, whether that's in your car, at the most local level, trade shows. It's building your not only your relationships, but your broader network within the industry that you're trying to target, right? So it's just going out because so much is still relationship driven, right? Even when it comes to even if you're a DTC brand, you're building a direct relationship with that consumer. So there's a relationship there. Everything comes down to relationships. And certainly if you're going to go through the retail channel, you got to get out there. You got to get out there, right? And realizing that it just takes time, right? No, not everyone's going to go from, not selling anything this year to 50 million in 3 years. Right? It takes a long time, and that it doesn't have to be. This is another thing. My business wasn't a 1.2 billion dollar business, right? And and often that's the only kind of target, or we hear of these super stardom companies, right? And sure, those are the unicorns that get all the attention in the news. What I don't think often enough gets the news is just somebody who started a great business, has a solid business, it's providing for them and their family, they're earning a nice income, and the business is growing and has a nice value, and maybe it sells for 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. That's a hell of a business. Not everything needs to be $100 million exits, 200 million, 1.2, right? There's nothing wrong with selling a business for $10 million and you're cool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think everyone wants to aim for that huge announcement, even though in reality, they're probably less than 5%, if at all, of founders would ever get to that point. But everyone aspires to be that unicorn, that road skincare or puppy, stuff like that. So,
Right.
but that's not the reality of things. I think that's just life doesn't work that way, I guess.
That's exactly right. It's a very few number of companies in whatever space that get to those kinds of levels.
Yeah.
But there's
Um,
nothing wrong with everybody else, right? If it's a good business, it's solid, you have employees, you're paying yourself a healthy salary, and it's growing and building value, hey, that's nice too.
yeah. Do you see avoidable mistakes that most brands make in their first 12 to 24 months that you think, hey, maybe you should stop making those mistakes because you're going to deal with it in 4 or 5 years and this would be a disaster for your business?
I think depending on the stage, I think oftentimes, more recently, I feel is the idea of I have to raise a ton of money in order to advance. Then you're in a fundraising mindset, which can take up a ton of your time and divert your focus from really building a business, thoughtfully reaching out to the. So I feel like attention is diverted to fundraising as opposed to going out and building relationships and building your product to the best that it can be, proving that it gets traction, and then going out and once you see you've got something, then go out potentially and raise money and really pour fuel on the fire. But I think it seems that too many are trying to fundraise too early.
That is
I
true.
didn't raise a penny all the years that I was in business. I didn't raise a single dollar.
How did you do that?
I just, grit and grind, man. Bootstrap, SBA loans, home equity lines of credit, credit cards, traditional bank loans, term loans and bank lines of credit through the banks, American Express lines of credit. I mean, I just, working with my vendors to get better terms. right? There's a lot of different ways to get at
Yeah.
capital
Right.
without having to give up part of your business and losing
Well,
focus.
yeah, but what would you say to founders that have families, that are worried about, mortgage or kids, all that stuff, what would you advise them when starting a company? The grit is there, the hustle is there, but life is life, and they have to deal with that as well. So how would you advise they balance that?
Absolutely. So, and I guess let me reframe when I say raising money. That's when it's really like, hey, we're raising $1 million for all this other stuff. And when I say raise money, I don't necessarily mean, when I first started my business, fortunately, my dad, and my uncle were able to buy the first container, right? Our very first container, right? Because I didn't have money to buy our first container. So that was, friends and family and loans that way. I don't consider that necessarily raising money. You know what I mean? It's from like I'm going out and doing a big raise. Um, so yes, if you need, let's say, your first container or your first production run,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, there's friends and family, and we funder and things like that, and potentially even a traditional SBA or bank loan. Somebody will work with you potentially, right? So it just depends on the case you present really to them, and if they believe in you as a bank. But I would always suggest going those routes first
Yeah.
and getting at least your first container in, right? And then you have your first container, and then you see if the product sells and resells. I remember very distinctly that first container arriving, and I packed my car up the next day and started going to stores, and within however many weeks it was like, wow, this stuff is moving, we need to get another container in. you know and by that point you have a little bit more confidence that it's selling.
I wonder how that feeling was, when you sold out your first container. That must have been the best thing in the world for you, because just watching all your grind, all your hustle, kind of like, well, sort of pay off. That is the proof point that this could potentially become something. That must have been a wonderful feeling. Can you describe what that was like for you?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was like, woo, but it still comes with all the anxieties and pressures and challenges of running a business, right? So on one hand, you're thrilled. On the other hand, you're starting to think, oh God, we're not going to have inventory soon, and then we're out of it. So all those kind of thoughts still come to mind, but yeah, it was cool, to realize I remember going into my stores, and I would go in every 6 to 8 weeks, let's say, on a rotation. I would drive by them again. So that way I could see, hey, the first time I sold them six of each of these SKUs, and I come back 6 weeks later, and hopefully they're sold out, or, they don't have as many left. So that's a good sign. And then I would fill it up to six again and come back 6 weeks later, and you're like, oh, they're gone again. Oh, that's a good sign. So after doing that enough times, you're going, wow, this stuff is selling and reselling, right? Especially in CPG, but really in any product. The key is to find out, do people buy it? And then more importantly, do they buy it again? Right? That's the key, right? Do they come back and buy it again? If you just sell one, that doesn't do you much good,
No, it
right?
doesn't.
In your business, you need people to subscribe.
Yeah.
You need to, right? Just coming in, trying it for a month and leaving,
Yeah.
that's not a good business. So, once we saw that was exciting. It's like, oh, geez, okay, we need another container. Let's get another container. How do we order it? How does it come through? And all the logistics behind that.
Okay, well that's amazing. But speaking about inventory, we're obviously biased here because of what we do at Synth. But what role do you think platforms like Synth should be playing in a founder's toolkit today, given how AI is super critical in our world today and in the very, in the future and even the distant future?
Well, once once a CPG brand gets that kind of market feedback that, okay, the product is selling, reselling, people like it, right? The business almost, I don't want to say shifts, but the priority then really becomes supply chain and cash flow, keeping it going, keeping it coming, keeping inventory coming, and keeping cash to pay for it, everything, right? It becomes that kind of a business. And your operations and your supply chain become the lifeblood of the business. So any tools that are going to help you manage that in the most efficient way to keep your inventory levels not too high but not too low, and using the cash in the most efficient way is critical. It's critical. So, we use spreadsheets, as you know, and that worked very well for us. But there are a lot of tools out there, Synth being one of them, that can assist in a lot of that stuff. So, but yeah, your inventory management and cash becomes the business, really.
Yeah.
That really becomes the business. And obviously marketing and brand, not to take anything away from all that, but once you have market validation, you got to keep that inventory coming, and never stop, hopefully.
If you were to launch today, if you were to start a business today, maybe you are starting one already, but
No.
where would you first automate? Like, what part of your workflow or process would you automate immediately, just given your experience in building a company, a brand?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's a lot really in that back office, invoicing, administrative type of data entry, that kind of stuff, would be one. Obviously, inventory, if that could be, more automated than, me pulling files from all the different platforms we were on and doing a bunch of VLOOKUPs to get stuff right. So, that kind of automation, really back office type stuff,
Yeah,
is really important. So inventory management, administrative, accounting
yeah, yeah.
would probably be the first places I'd go.
Okay, okay. We're already seeing that right now with brands we're working with. We work with, small brands, but mid-sized brands as well. And the one thing they always need automation with is inventory.
Yeah,
Before anything else, inventory supply chain is like the first thing they need to automate because it creates lots of inefficiencies if you stick to spreadsheets for too long. And it gets much worse or much complex when you move omni-channel, when you're selling direct to consumer
yes,
but also on Amazon, retailers, marketplaces, all that stuff, it becomes a huge mess. And you're now dealing with out of stock situations or overstocking. That means, cash being tied in inventory that's not moving. So I think that's something we're seeing. And that's why we're really, really excited about what we're building here at Synth, which is like a vertical AI agent platform that is automating supply chain workflows for omnichannel consumer brands with agents that handle order processing, even aligning marketing campaigns with inventory and also streamlining supplier coordination as well. My final question for you is, really about mentorship. We met last year during Techstars, and you were one of our best mentors we had. We had a great time with you. The first 15 minutes we had with you was amazing, and then subsequent calls we had with you, even post program, you really helped us a lot. And so what keeps you coming back to mentorship? Like you're a very busy person. You have no time really, but you still make time to do mentorship for like Techstars or SKU or even naturally different brands you work with. Why do you do it? What keeps you coming back to it?
I think it goes back to, I had great mentors, right? And if it weren't for my mentors, then I wouldn't have been able to do what we did. And if I could be half as good as they were to me to somebody else, that's just really rewarding. It's I guess it's rewarding to help people, right? It's rewarding to see someone's growth over time. And I've been impacted many times in my life, even pre-business and certainly post-business and during the business, but by something that somebody says that changes your life, right? Or changes your perspective and perhaps changes your life. And you go, wow, I never thought of it in that way, right? And that's happened to me so many times in my life that those types of things that people said shaped my life, and shaped, who I've become and everything. So I've always been a believer in that, and a believer in good coaching, and believer in having a good teacher and a good mentor. I've always considered myself to be a good student, from people that I trust and believe are smarter and wiser than I am, right? And circling yourself with those types of people that can influence you, I think is a really positive thing. So if I could be something like that to anybody, that's just really rewarding to, hopefully have an impact on a person's, whether it's their business or their life, which is even more important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Addie. You made an impact in our lives, obviously. So thanks a
Oh,
great
well,
deal
thank you.
in our business as well. But really, really thanks for doing this. Yeah, that's all for now.
Oh, my pleasure, Lloyd. That was great.